Hi, friends. Today you're in for a treat. I have the good fortune of interviewing someone who not only am I a huge fan of his work, but he also happens to be an old friend. He is a writer, a producer, a director, and an actor. In 2015, he made his feature debut as a director on the film Gravy, which has gone on to become a cult classic horror comedy. In the television world, he has a very long list of credits as a writer and director. Those include The Resident, Battle Creek, Rosewood, Into the Dark, and Psych. And in addition to his writing and directing career, he is a gifted comedic actor where he is best known for the role in the long running series Psych, which originally aired on the USA Network and is where we met. And now that series runs on Amazon Prime and on Peacock. But most recently, he just wrapped the fifth and final season of A Million Little Things. In that series finale, he co-wrote and gave an amazing dramatic performance that left me in tears. And that's not an easy thing to do. If you didn't see it, if you didn't see it on ABC, you can stream it on Hulu. There is very little this guy can't do. He is talented and prolific and funny and athletic, and he's just so much fun to hang out with. So with that, I would like to welcome my friend, James Roday Rodriguez.
Wow. I need you to just walk into rooms ahead of me and make my intros from now on.
I think that's what I'll do.
And
Well,
bucket list, making the dragon lady cry. Come on. That's pretty big.
so let's see, we're 10 seconds into this interview, and you've already called me by my nickname, which was given to me by you, and the only person who's ever called me that. And
Yes. And I called you that affectionately, and that was before Game of Thrones. So
oh
it was
my God, that's right.
almost like I was prognosticating. I knew that something powerful was going to come into the zeitgeist and validate praise that I had been laying on you for years for being
What?
a powerful, magical woman who I also imagined when she was angry could potentially breathe fire out of her face.
So James is clearly referring to my former career as a television executive. I was the executive on his long-running series Psych, and I would get notes on my notes saying, "Dear Dragon Lady." And then he would then rebut my notes or comment or, you know, argue with my edits or whatever. But I actually treasure that name. I don't think anybody else knows that name except me.
Well, it's out there now.
It's out there now. I just can't wait for people to call me Dragon Lady. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, Mr. I knew you as Roday, and you're now Roday Rodriguez, which I know is actually your birth name.
Yes, I reclaimed it during the pandemic when I had some moments of looking inwards and time to talk to my dad about my grandparents and heard a bunch of stories that I'd never heard before, and then looked in the mirror and was like, what the hell are you doing? And better late than never. So I slapped it back on there, and I feel a little bit better, but ultimately still extremely regretful that my grandparents both passed away without ever getting to see their family name pop up on the screen and be connected to my work.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
but your dad does.
He sure does, and he really enjoys it.
I love that. I love that. So I don't even know where to start because I have so many questions for you. Should we start with this finale that you've just finished? And because it's in the zeitgeist and it was a tremendous performance as Gary
Sure.
Mendez.
Yeah. Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that process. I don't want to give away the ending because I really do want people to catch up with it on Hulu if they haven't seen it already on ABC. But you were a character who, when we meet you at the beginning of the show,
Yeah, I played a character who had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and obviously that's a disease that has affected just about all of us in one way or another, whether it be personally or someone that we love. But I had never seen it told quite like that from the perspective of a man.
right?
Although I knew that that was something that was possible, it certainly wasn't something that I had ever experienced firsthand, secondhand, or third hand before. So that was the single most interesting thing to me about playing that character. I can't say that I was looking to jump onto a network television show. I can't say that I was even that interested in doing another series, but I was at an interesting point in my life where I was trying to decide if I was done acting or not. And that came along, and I was like, oh, well, this is a good litmus test. If you pass on playing a man with breast cancer, you're definitely done it. Like, you're making that decision. And I couldn't quite do it. I couldn't quite like make peace with that. So I said yes, and in my head I thought pilot, maybe a season 2 tops. Tops, because the state of television and network television especially, and it wasn't a procedural. It was like, how long can this possibly last?
Right.
5 seasons is how long it can last, is the answer.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And a great character. A great character. And you did it so well because it was never melancholy with you. It was always with your biting wit. It was always with your roguish charm. It was just all the things. It was really, really fun to watch. It wasn't fun to watch the end because the end was incredibly bittersweet, but it was amazing to see you play that level of a dramatic role because I really know you as a comedic actor.
Well, thank you. Those are very kind words and very high praise coming from you. As you know, I've always held your opinion in high regard. So thank you very much. That does mean a lot to me.
Talk to me a little bit about how you even started. I know the story, but I think listeners would be interested. How did you even start acting and when did the calling come? And then what was the process? Because as you know, I don't need to tell you, lots of little kids want to be actors. Lots of adults want to be actors. Lots of people move to Hollywood to be an actor. Lots of people audition. Lots of people even get agents. And very, very, very few ever become actors, ever become paid actors, and ever become successful actors. So it's really like winning the lottery in many ways. And you have done it multiple, multiple, multiple times. And we'll talk about the other hats you wear later, but I want to talk about the acting hat first.
Oh, you're absolutely right when you compare it to winning the lottery. My story is shockingly linear. I grew up playing, playing a lot of sports, all the ball sports, basically, because I was in Texas. And when I got to high school, it became clear that I was never going to be good enough at any of them to hang my hat on them in any sort of real way. I was also just not big enough, frankly, which left me with tennis, which I love and play to this day. But I also didn't have aspirations to even be a college tennis player, really. And so I started taking theater my freshman year of high school, and I got bit really hard by the acting bug. And our high school theater director ran that program like we were at a performing arts school. Like if you wanted to do theater, that's what you did. Like it
Wow.
wasn't like, hey, you can do all these things and still be in a play. No, he expected you to choose theater and make it your first priority. And I'm lucky. I mean, that's the first dose of blind luck because this was just a big giant public school in San Antonio, Texas. So to land with him was the first stroke of luck. And then he helped shepherd what at the time I can only imagine was pretty raw talent into something a little more refined. And then when I started thinking beyond high school, I went to him and I said, look, you're sort of like my North Star when it comes to acting. Do you think I can pursue this? You can be
Right.
honest. I'm secretly, of course, praying that he says yes, but I guess I was prepared to accept a no as well and then probably pivot. And he said, no, I think you can. I think you need to go to New York. I think you need to keep studying, and I think you can do this. So that made it very simple in terms of like college. I went to NYU. I studied theater for 4 more years. I was on that same track, never got off of it, never wavered, never thought, oh, what the hell am I doing? This is stupid because I love New York City so much. Still my favorite place in the world.
Me too. I
Yeah.
share that with you. I share the love of tennis and New York City with you. So,
Yes, we do. We have that. And then that's where the luck really started to come in because my final year at NYU, randomly and out of nowhere, got an opportunity to audition for a network television pilot late stages of the pilot season. Like it was about to, I think, probably get shut down. This was like their last gasp at trying to cast their guy. And I had no idea what a pilot was. I didn't know that a pilot was something other than a person who flew an airplane. And so, dumb kid, no idea what the stakes were, went in and, was actually pretty loose. And I guess natural, next thing I knew, I'm on a plane flying to Los Angeles, having to get permission to miss a final to test. Again, not a term I was familiar with, uh, for this half-hour multi-camera pilot. That it was sort of this is going to sound terrible because I think it might have been. It was like the half-hour multicam version of that show Party of Five. It was basically like some parents die. That's how the show starts. And then these two just barely out of college newlyweds inherit like the brother's three kids. And so you have like this instant family, and the oldest person is 22 years old. Shockingly, did not go, but I did get that pilot, and I shot it in front of a live studio audience. And this was all while I still had like a couple weeks left of college. Came back, was able to take all my finals, graduated, got an agent, and the following, I had to bartend for about 10 months, but then when the next pilot season rolled around, I had that agent from the first pilot, got another one that did get picked up, moved me to Los Angeles in 1999, a year out of college, and I have not stopped working since. It's
Wow.
You nailed it. It is, so much of it is about luck and opportunity, and it's why I caution anyone with this dream. Like, yes, hard work pays off. Yes, to an extent, I believe that you can do anything if you just put your mind to it. All that stuff, all that aspirational stuff, I think has value for sure. But when it comes to this business, you do have to get lucky.
I agree with that.
In
I agree
addition
with
to
that.
those things,
Yeah.
and I did, and that's just the absurd truth of it.
So now talk about when the writing bug bit, or did the directing bug bite first?
I was an only child who spent the first, 12 years of my life on an Air Force base. I was a latchkey kid for a while there, and I just watched a ton of movies. I just watched a lot of cinema. And a good chunk of it was stuff that a kid had no business watching, by the way, because we had cable. And so I was watching just movies all day long. And I was sort of romanced by making movies. So once I got adjacent to that, which was theater and acting, it was a pretty natural progression for me to start growing my interest in making movies or learning how to make a movie. What is that? And so writing and directing kind of went hand in hand. And I knew that it was something I was interested in, back in college when I was taking cinema studies classes. The first opportunity that came along was to write. And that happened because that second pilot that I got, the one that moved me to Los Angeles, was created by a man named James DeMonico, who at the time was half of a writing team, and they had written features mostly.
Mm-hmm.
That same James DeMonico would go on to become the guy who created the franchise called The Purge and all of the movies and the series that landed on USA.
Mm-hmm.
And he became my best friend, Todd, who you know as
Mm-hmm.
well. He became our mentor in all things entertainment industry. And when we said, hey man, we think we want to write, we figured best case scenario, he would tell us like, oh, you should go read this book.
Right.
Or go read this script.
Right.
Instead, he's like, well, let's pitch some ideas and like, let's all write a script together.
Wow.
And so we did, and we sold it to Lionsgate, and it got made.
Wow. What was the
Again,
name of that one?
it was called Skinwalkers. This is not a movie that anyone needs to rush out and see. I do firmly believe that at one point it was a good, not great, good script that was turned into a bad movie. Bad movie. But it was also my introduction to what it was like to be a writer, how writers were treated.
Uh-huh.
how the role can sort of go from very important to completely disposable, and it can happen like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely a trial by fire and also a rude awakening to what it was like to write, especially features within the studio system. But again, very early on, there I was lucking out and getting into the WGA, in my early 20s.
Amazing.
Yeah. Cut to Psych a few years later, and everybody's hero, Steve Franks, knowing that I had co-written Skinwalkers and that I was a huge horror fan and just a big cinephile, comes to me during the first season and says, "Hey, let's write a scary episode together." Like,
Hmm.
didn't even have to ask. I never
Hmm.
had to ask on Psych, which is
Wow.
so bonkers. Steve was just intuitive and wanted to sort of shepherd and cultivate, I think, all of my desires, because he recognized that the happier I was, the better it was probably for our show.
Yeah.
And so the first thing was, hey, let's write an episode. And, we did the finale of season 1, which was sort of a send up of Sorority House Massacre, Slumber Party Massacre, all of the sort of college girls in peril slasher trope movies. And John Landis came in to direct it. Again, first thing I'd ever had produced on television ends up being directed by the same guy who directed American Werewolf in London, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Just living under a lucky star. And then from that moment, because it was a good experience and the episodes seemed to land pretty well and the fans enjoyed it, it was at least 2 episodes a season where I was just able to write and pitch ideas, and was basically treated like a member of the writers' room, even though I was in Vancouver and everybody else was in Los Angeles. But there was never any resentment.
No,
Um,
not at all.
didn't feel, I
People
think,
people loved
yeah,
when you wrote, and all of it.
yeah,
The interesting thing to me is I really do love your humility, and I love how often you will give it up to it was luck. I was in the right place at the right time, or somebody was really gracious, or I had all these incredible mentors. And I know that's all true, but it really speaks to your humility, number one. But the second thing is the term we refer to in coaching all the time is you took the action steps. So everything starts with a circumstance, right? So the circumstance is, acting, or opportunity, I guess is the circumstance. But you had this thought, I want to be an actor, and I like film, and I like writing, and I would like to be involved in directing and producing, to the degree that you even knew what that was when you started in film school. But then what you did was you took action. You went to film school, you got on the airplane and went and did a test in Los Angeles, and got permission to miss your finals, although I think most kids would probably do that even if they didn't know what a pilot was. You took the opportunity to write when somebody gave you the opportunity to write. You took the opportunity to direct when somebody gave you the opportunity to direct, and you've never stopped. And that's kind of, I believe, the difference between just being lucky and just being talented. 'Cause there's a lot of lucky people and there's a lot of talented people. It's marrying those two things with hard work. And that's what you have.
you're absolutely right. And if there was anything worth preaching to people who may be watching with similar, aspirations, it is the hard work part. Because the other thing that I can tell you about this business, which I know you can attest to, is it's here today, gone tomorrow. Like, you can think that you've arrived, and 4 episodes of whatever thing you're working on later, you are back out on the street, and it is, what have you done for me lately? And that is just a harsh reality of our
Mm-hmm.
business. So
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I can say that I did once those opportunities started presenting themselves, and maybe I overcorrected, maybe I did, maybe there's a better balance. I don't want to say you have to do it like this, but that's it. I was just like, right now, while I am young and I have infinite energy and a ton of drive, like, I'm going to put all of my energy, all of my resources, all of my emotional realism, I'm going to put it into trying to get as far down this field as I possibly can, so that if something doesn't go my way or there is a bit of a dry spell, I will have built up, enough currency and enough equity that I don't disappear overnight. And in order to do that, I didn't go on a lot of vacations. I didn't go to a lot of parties. That was not part of my was not part of my 20s in Los Angeles. I really didn't date that much. Like I chose, dream. And to
Mm-hmm.
that extent, I can say hard work does pay off
Mm-hmm.
because I came out to LA with a lot of guys and gals the same age, sort of in the same place at the same time with very similar backgrounds and resumes. And the one thing I feel like I was doing more than them was keeping my eyes on the prize, you know?
I agree with you.
So
I agree that you've done
there's
that.
definitely value in that.
Okay. So now, having worn all four hats, which, many of your colleagues have, but not everybody, it's pretty unusual to hold all four, which is acting, writing, directing, and producing. Do you have a favorite hat currently?
It's not producing, that's a distant fourth.
Okay.
You know this, producing, a lot of producing is just managing personalities, and it's absolutely
Yes.
so exhausting. It's so
Yes.
exhausting because everyone, including us, are just so sensitive and so different and have different needs. And then you realize that's great, but none of it has anything to do with this thing that we have to get made,
100%.
So that's that, yeah. It's a
Okay. So
necessary
that's a
evil,
distant
but it's
hat.
tough.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I would say, for most of my life, acting was obviously way up at the top. There has been a bit of an evolution for me, and I would say acting has probably dropped down and is probably in that three spot now. And writing and directing is kind of pushed past it. I just feel like there's more ground to cover. There's more possibilities. There comes a point in any actor's career, with very few exceptions, like maybe, Richard Farnsworth being a great one, where you kind of are what you are. Like you've been doing it for long enough, and the business has seen you for long enough that you're a working actor, and that's awesome. But the chances of something dramatically changing, who you are in this business as an actor once you've been doing it for 25 years are slim, versus creating something where you're kind of you're the invisible person. Like nobody knows what writers look like, and with few exceptions, nobody knows what directors look like. It's just, what is this thing that you made? So for me, I feel like the ceiling is higher, and the possibilities are greater in terms of what I can contribute as a writer and a director, for the next chapter of my life than they are for what I can do as an actor. So that's sort of where I've settled in.
That's a great answer. Now, I think I know the answer to this next question. It's actually one of the few things, we'll see if I'm right, but it's one of the few things you and I differ on, because we both love animals. We both love tennis. We both love movies. We both love television. I probably like talking more than you do, although, which is so funny because you make your living projecting the idea that you like talking, but I, in fact, like talking. But in real life, I think you're more the introvert. I'm probably more the extrovert, which is very peculiar because I would never get on camera. What's your favorite genre?
It's horror, and it's always been horror.
That's what I thought you'd say.
Yeah. From a way too early age, I was watching monster movies and Italian giallos and people getting carved up, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And a lot of it, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, the nuanced storytelling is speaking to me. It was it was something very visceral at that point. It was like, how do these monsters get made? How does this magic happen? Because even at 6 years old, I knew that the woman getting ripped apart by the werewolf in American Werewolf in London was getting up and walking away from that. Like I knew that I wasn't watching somebody die. What I was watching was magic, and I wanted to know how that magic was happening, versus watching an incredible scene between, Kevin Kline and Glenn Close in The Big Chill. Yeah, that's great, but like it's just two people sitting on and talking on a bed. Like I can see that in my own house. Like, what is this spectacle? And so for a while there, I became like absolutely obsessed with like practical and makeup effects and prosthetics, and
Yeah.
making my own masks and slashing my own throat and burning myself and all that kind of stuff. Never scared me, not for 1 second. Can't explain it. It was never an issue. And I think once my mother realized that, she was like, well, he's not scared. It's not giving him nightmares. He doesn't think there's a monster under his bed. And he seems to enjoy it, and it occupies him for long stretches of time. So,
She
yeah,
went with it. She
yeah,
went with it.
as long as I promised to cover my eyes if they're boobies. So people could get ripped to shreds and have their
Right,
heads,
but no sexual.
but not a
No,
nipple. Are you kidding me? No.
right. Hilarious. Hilarious. All right. Probably a trick question because I think it's hard to pull from a 25-year career in a moment with no preparation, but try or give me your top three if you can't single it out. What was your biggest thrill of your career? And let me qualify that. I don't mean like your first opportunity to write, your first opportunity to direct. I don't mean that. I mean, as a TV star, is there any moment where you're like, holy cow, I can't believe I get to do a scene with this person or direct this person or they're directing me? John Landis, you already named. But is there a moment where you're like, I think I know what it is, but I want to hear it from you?
I'll preface it by saying Psych was my dream job for so many reasons. One of which was we became a time capsule for actors and actresses who, frankly, peaked in the 80s and early 90s.
100%.
And as a result, we just got to go through our personal wish list of bringing people back that we grew up, watching and loving and having crushes on. And they all said yes. So it was a weekly occurrence,
Yeah.
on that show. I was in constant fanboy mode. I'll get to the one that I think you're thinking of,
Well,
but
we'll see. We'll see if I'm right because you did an
oh,
awful lot of episodes. So
we
it would
did.
be hard to know if I guessed right.
Along the way there were so many, but one of the ones that I was so jazzed about, but also probably most proud of, was when Ali Sheedy came up to play what would become sort of an iconic character within the fabric of Psych. Because not only was she one of my favorites from the time I was, a little bitty thing, but she was not what we had in mind when we wrote that character. We did a huge pivot from Rutger Hauer, which is about as far as you can get on the other side of the spectrum of acting, to Ali Sheedy. And then what she did with that character and the way she made it her own, it was just, I don't know, it just felt so kismety and beautiful. And then Ali herself turned out to be an absolute beautiful gem of a human being. And we're very good friends to this day. And that was certainly one of the moments where I was just like, I am so lucky to not only do what I do, but to meet who I get to meet and work who I get to work with. Another one is when, after 5 years of banging on the door and getting probably increasingly annoying along the way, I finally got everybody to sign off on doing a Twin Peaks episode. Twin Peaks was probably my favorite television show of all time.
It's on my top 10.
I had become, not through just sheer living in Los Angeles and playing softball, I had become friends with Dana Ashbrook, who played Bobby Briggs. I knew I had the key. Like, I knew if I could just get the green light, I knew I could go to Dana and he would help me campaign with the rest of the cast. And sure enough, we had, I think, 8 members of the Twin Peaks cast up, all to do one episode. They were literally having a reunion at the Sutton Place, which is a hotel in Vancouver. Some of them hadn't seen each other in 15 years. Once again, I sat there pinching myself, and I think peeing a little bit, because I just couldn't believe it. Like, these were the characters that it was destination viewing for me, as a 12 and 13-year-old. And now they were all sitting around me, breaking bread and telling stories. And then I actually got to watch them all act in an episode that I co-wrote. It was just bonkers, which gets me to the one that I'm guessing was the one that you would have said if you were on Jeopardy. And that was in the finale of the series of Psych. We had a character that we had referred to the entire run of the show, but he lived off camera. He was a detective at the police station, and we would call him out and we'd talk to him and address him. But he lived an entire full emotional life, not in front of the camera. In the finale, we revealed who that detective was. The whole time you just didn't know it. And it was ended up being my childhood idol. I would say childhood all the way through college, well into my 20s. And that was Val Kilmer. He was an absolute dreamboat. And they say don't meet your heroes. And in Val's case, I was worried because there's a lot of crazy stories out there about old Val. And he showed up and was a prince to everyone. He was an absolute joy. He was so generous with his time. It was it. That was like not only was Psych over, but this incredible journey that was rife with so many of those types of moments ended with the biggest one of all. It
Yeah.
wasn't a cherry on top of a sundae. It was an entire strawberry field. I switched fruits on you there, but I didn't think there was a next level, and then there was.
I share your love affair of Val Kilmer growing up. I'm older than you. So my Val Kilmer experience was college, but in that when I discovered him. But yeah, those are some of my favorite movies of all time. So I share that with you. I share your love of Ali Sheedy because Breakfast Club is definitely in a top 10 movie for me. I share most of those. What I thought you would say, so I actually would have gotten the Jeopardy question wrong, was Kurt Smith.
That's a trick question because Kurt had never acted before we made him act on Psych, but it counts as far as meeting one of your heroes. Absolutely, 100%. And
Just because you were such a Tears from Fears fan.
if you ever listen to this podcast, it's very important to me that I qualify the fact that, while he is a fine actor and he has repeatedly done a wonderful job playing himself. I was initially going through people that are mostly identified for their work as thespians, but if we're opening up to musicians as well. Yes, he's right there at the top, and that was just me in a moment that's very not out of character for me, as we sort of just covered. Like I am somewhat introverted and I tend to be shy, especially when I first get to know you or like when I first start a job. But I got backstage at a Tears for Fears concert and I don't know, maybe I had some liquid courage in me. I don't know what was going on that night, but I just marched up to that dude and I said, "Hey man, you ever want to be on a television show? I'll put you on Psych." I was acting like I was, the head of the studio. "I'll put you on Psych, whatever you want to do, man. Whatever you want." I had his manager next to him. I was like, "You just say the word, we'll figure it out." It was one of the boldest, most ridiculous things that I've ever done. And sure enough, his kids at the time were aware of Psych
Yeah.
and liked
Yeah.
the show, as it so often happened. Next thing we knew, there's Kurt coming up to Vancouver, having never acted before. And he would go on to make multiple appearances. And we just, it kind of became a runner of like, what thing would we do to torture Kurt Smith next? I
It's
mean,
so awesome. It's
got
so
shot, he
awesome.
got attacked by a panther, stuff before Kurt.
Oh my God. I love reliving some of these episodes with you. It is so much fun. I would be remiss if I didn't end this interview with a couple of more questions, just to sort of bring it all full circle to what I do now for a living, which is help people, mostly in the entertainment business, but also outside of the entertainment business, manage their stressful or anxious minds. And I imagine with someone with your brain capacity and drive and work ethic and all the things, you've had to have had your share of stress and anxiety throughout your career. I know you've been blessed. I know you feel like had a lucky star above you, supremely talented, but it's still a lot. You're juggling a lot. Characters, words, scripts, personalities, agendas, budgets, all the things. What was kind of your secret all along to managing stress and anxiety, or what is currently? And do you have a daily routine? That's my third question. So it's like a compound question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, undoubtedly stress and anxiety for sure, almost every day. I mean, it's crazy what we can normalize as human beings. But I think once you sort of fall into a schedule, and especially the one that I've been on for so long, you just kind of build what you're saying, that routine into what you're doing, and what might seem crazy to someone else starts to feel pretty routine and normal to you as long as you have a handle on it. And I think the greatest source of my stress and anxiety over the years has always been expectation, like because opportunity is linked directly to expectation, like not only what other people expect, but what you expect of yourself.
Hmm.
We were part of a machine that existed solely, and people don't talk about this enough because of fans, because people turned on their televisions at night and needed to cut loose and relax and escape. That's why we all had jobs. Like
Yeah.
those people don't give a shit if they don't watch television. If they find some other way to entertain themselves, we're screwed. So for me, it was always like, you have this opportunity. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to make something that isn't just fluff and blows away, but that might actually somehow, penetrate that first layer, and affect people. And that was the shit that would keep me up at night. It was like,
Hmm.
are we doing enough?
Hmm.
Is our formula the right formula?
Hmm.
Is this episode just filler? Is this just a turkey leg? Is that okay? Like, is it okay to have one bad episode a season? Like when you're doing 15 good ones, like that was the shit that would keep me from sleeping or cause me to get up at 2 a.m. and eat an entire package of Pullum Twizzlers. I mean, if you go back and watch like the middle seasons of Psych, like I plumped up quite nicely. And that was certainly a product of the stress and anxiety that I was feeling at that point in my life. So yes, 100%, tons of stress and anxiety. That's the source. Do I have a routine now? Yes. I think one thing I've gotten better at over the years is appreciating the moments when someone says, you know what, you did accomplish that. Instead
Hmm.
of instead of throwing it away, no, 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 I don't know how to take a compliment. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's kind of like we can get. I got to get back to the grindstone. Like, whoa, time out. This person just told you that you did something meaningful that helped them in their life. This person just told you that the thing that kept them connected to their daughter or son throughout high school was coming together and watching, Psych once a week. Like so many people have versions of that story.
Yeah.
It's like, let it affect you. You say that's what you care about, right? You say
Yeah.
so when it happens and when they pay it forward and you get it back, shit, man, like let you be affected by that. Let that inform you as much as you want it to inform them. And I think I learned how to do that a little bit better. And it helped me with a million little things too, because I was a whole different strand of stress and anxiety. But
Yeah.
but knowing that it was having an effect on people is what helps you kind of bring it all back to a place where it makes sense.
So, in some ways, what we're really saying is let the gratitude resonate.
1,000,000%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Somebody says thank you, or somebody says you were wonderful, or somebody says you saved my life, or somebody says you entertained me, or somebody said you helped me. Spend a minute going, I hear you, I receive that,
and
and thank you.
it means the world to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you. Daily routines? Do you have them now? I know when
Uh,
you're on an acting schedule, it's very difficult to have any routine because you just
yeah.
have to get to the set and do your
Exercise,
thing.
exercise is important because it's a good way to sort of isolate yourself from everything else that's happening for an hour or however long you can afford to do it, and you sort of go into a different brain, which
Hmm.
I generally am able to do because I tend to take workout classes where you can't cheat and you can't like slip into your own world because you've got headphones on. You've literally got someone screaming at you and telling you if you suck. So it kind of forces you to be present. And when I'm present getting my ass kicked, I'm not actually thinking about all the things that stress me out in my life.
I
I'm
love
just
that.
trying to stay alive. And the other thing I've discovered is cryotherapy, which is
Oh,
the closest thing that I will ever get to meditation, I think. And it's because it's only 3.5 minutes long. And
and are you going into the machine or are you going into an ice bath? Which one?
I'm going into the full body enclosed,
Uh huh.
basically like a giant walk-in freezer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm also a man of a certain age, so it helps me with recovery, helps with inflammation, it helps plump up your red blood cells. And I can, because I'm something of a polar bear and I've always run hot, I can go in and shut my eyes and get to a very, very peaceful place whilst freezing. So that's something that I do just about every day.
You have your own machine or you go to a place?
I have a place. It's right down
How
the hill.
cool.
Yeah,
As somebody
literally.
who's always suffering from sports injuries, that is not something I've tried yet.
Oh, I recommend it highly, unless being cold makes you the most miserable person ever.
It does, which is why I live in Hawaii. And if it gets below 69 degrees, I'm like panicked.
That
So,
could be tricky, but what you would feel afterwards might make it worth it.
all right, I'm going to definitely think about it. So, as we wrap up, are you no longer on social media of any kind? Is there any way that people can follow you? I mean, other than, of course, seeing your shows on Amazon and Peacock and Hulu and all the things, is there any way people can follow you?
I do have an Instagram account. It's still just my name. I don't post much on there, but the stuff I do post is usually for a good cause. So there's always that. Yeah, it was the funniest, like most surreal little story. I was hacked. I used to be fairly active on Twitter. It's tough. It's tough out there. Trying to navigate like when to engage and what soapboxes to stand on and what is this platform actually for. And it was tough. I think we were all experiencing our own versions of that. And that was before Elon took it over. So, it was already like tumultuous. And then one day I'm sitting there and I get a text and an email within like a couple minutes of each other saying, we're detecting someone trying to get into your account and it seems fishy. If this is you, disregard. If not, like respond. And I was like, well, definitely fishy because I'm sitting here watching sports. So I respond to the email and then it gives me a code. And then the text says, you should have just gotten a code. Type this in now. I'm half paying attention to all of this shit.
Oh,
I'm
no.
trying to watch a tennis match. So I just like, yeah, I guess this is the infrastructure.
Oh, no.
So I type this code in to my phone, and then 2 minutes later, I get a text from the same number going 25,000 Bitcoin if you want it back.
No way.
I guess from a burner number. And I was like, did you do any research before you hack people? Because if you did, you would have known that there is no universe wherein I was going to give you one penny, Bitcoin, USD, or Canadian dollars to get my Twitter account back. But good job. Like, well done. You got me. And that was it for me on that platform.
Oh, I love that. I'm sorry about that. I'm not on Twitter. It's one of the few platforms I'm not on, but mostly because I just can't deal with the political rhetoric. It makes
Seems
me
wild,
loony and just,
wild.
yeah. Is it James Roday or James Roday Rodriguez on Instagram?
I think it's still just James Roday is my handle.
Okay.
I honestly
Okay.
don't have no idea how to change it, so I didn't
Just
try.
so people can see you and all the
Yeah, and
things.
you know what? I have to say one thing before you wrap this up too, because we just covered this gratitude, and this is an opportunity for me to tell everyone who listens to your podcast what an absolute joy and pivotal player that you were in my early development as an artist. We as actors work with all different types, and because there often exists a chasm between those of us that are doing the work and those of us that are the suits in the offices giving notes. So there's a bit of an us versus them narrative that's been born, especially in television. And I gotta say, it never felt like that on Psych, and it never felt like that with you. I felt like you were a real advocate of what we were doing and of me specifically. And I just want to say thank you for being someone who so early on saw me as more than just an actor and was able to identify like the sum of my parts, and for giving me opportunities to do things that were outside of just acting, and for just generally being intelligent and sane and saying thoughtful, helpful things and giving good notes. I feel like that should be out there about you for all of your listeners to hear.
Well, in honor of what you were just saying, I received that compliment with gratitude and thank you. That is very generous of you. It feels like a lifetime ago that I wore a suit, that I was a suit, or that I was giving someone like you notes, but I recall it vaguely and I appreciate the kind words. This has been such a pleasure. And I so thank you for your time. And I so hope that people will catch up with you and see the great work that you did the season finale just premiered, I think just 2 weeks ago. So they can grab it. And if they didn't see it from the beginning on A Million Little Things, they can start it from the beginning because it's a wonderful series, as well as obviously, since I'm partial to it, the 8 seasons of Psych. So, James, thank you. And
Thank you very much. The pleasure was mine. And good luck with your next episode, which I believe is Jeffrey Donovan.
hadn't thought about that, but that's hilarious. All right. I will talk to you soon.